Guild Wars 2 has just had their first update tackling one of their longest standing issues. Let's get into it today, talking about it and giving my overall impressions. Hi everyone, welcome on back to the channel. Guild Wars 2 dropped somewhat of a stealth update today with a Fractal Event, and with it, a new Quickplay matchmaking system with Fractals. Now, this has quite a few parameters and quite a few additions to it, so that it can ensure smooth gameplay experience. Now, this Quickplay feature is a permanent thing in the game. It's not going to go away when the event ends. This is going to stay in, of course, as a beta for the moment. They are probably going to do further iteration on this as they continue on releasing the primary expansion for Visions of Eternity, and then additionally for patch 6.1, where they're having larger quality of life systems. So let's talk about how this system works. It's quite straightforward and very bare bones. The new Fractal Quickplay group beta option is located in the Looking for Group panel under Fractals of the Mists, and this solely is for the scales 1 to 25. And by playing Fractals this way, you don't have to worry about agony resistance at all. They're all technically scaled to level 1. Now, the pool of actual fractals that you can choose from are limited. They're not the entire array of fractals currently in the game. These Quickplay fractals include Aetherblade, Cliffside, Deepstone, Kinfall, Molten Boss, Molten Furnace, Snowblind, Uncategorized, Urban Battleground, and Volcanic. So, a much tighter pool of fractals to play around with. And I do like this selection. They are somewhat more reminiscent of classic dungeon layouts where you are rushing through trash packs and you'll have to fight a few bosses in between before you get to the true final boss, where there are typically more mechanics. And in this situation, you will go to the Looking for Group tab, go to your fractal scale 1 through 25, click the button, and the game will automatically look for 4 other players. 4 other adventurers looking to tackle some fractals. And once they find 4 other players, the game will automatically teleport you to one of the random fractal dungeons. There's so many different things that can, branch off from this, but I gotta say, as it is right now, it's such a novelty in Guild Wars 2 to have a system that will automatically place you into PvE content. And of course, this is PvE content that is much easier to get into. It's lower difficulty scales. But even that, I see like this light at the end of the tunnel of what could be and where the game could go. So as it is right now, the convenience of being able to just come into a fractal wherever you are in the world. You don't have to go back to Lion's Arch. You don't have to go to the Mistlock Sanctuary. You don't have to go to the Fractals of the Mists hub. You can just access it wherever you are in the world. And that's another huge quality of life feature that this system could bring to various other realms of PvE content. So I also mentioned that there were some slight adjustments and parameters that are changed when you are in a Quickplay group. So these would include a variety of buffs and certain enchantments and enhancements when you're in this type of fractal, which I'll give my opinions on afterwards. But essentially, if you are defeated in a dungeon, the Mist Stranger will revive you after a short delay. Special pocket waypoints have been distributed within the fractals, which allow you to teleport to the most current beat of that dungeon. In some hero challenges, the Mist Stranger will lend a hand in flipping levers or standing on pressure plates if a certain dungeon requires it. And adventurers will be shielded from the debilitating effects of a particular fractal, which is the Cliffside fractal. And then also in the Kinfall fractal, even if they use their life fire, they can expend the life fire to unlock doors after their flame has already run out. So they've made a few adjustments just to make the quick play versions of these fractals a little bit smoother in terms of deaths, mechanical issues, or certain buffs that will interact with the dungeon design itself. Now, my overall opinion of this is all of these are great, but in honesty and in truth, with my time playing a good handful of dungeons so far, I don't really think this is greatly needed. I think that it's already super easy in my experience playing these lower level dungeons. And I can imagine that, you know, being ArenaNet, they want to make sure that if they happen to matchmake a whole bunch of new players together, that they'd have an almost guaranteed like success with that dungeon. I don't necessarily agree with that per se. I think having a little bit of challenge is smart and important to keep that combat experience engaging. Because if you're just blitzing and blowing through all of the dungeon content super quickly, then there's a satisfying speed to it. But in terms of actually engaging with mechanics or learning mechanics, it's not the most optimal situation. So in my opinion, I don't really think any of these added modifiers are truly needed, mostly because the difficulty of scale 1 is so low. And also in my experience in terms of matchmaking, now this might just be because it's so new, you have so many players engaging with this, it's that when I'm being grouped up, it seems that 3 out of the 5, maybe even 4 out of the 5 players in my party are extremely well geared, extremely experienced, and seem to know what they're doing. Sometimes people will be shot calling, but most of the time, everyone is just racing right through, cleaving mobs down. And maybe to a new player, that would actually be a little bit blindsiding in terms of the speed at which they're going through these bosses. And then also, if that player decides to progress with these Fractal Dungeons and, you know, go in more specific groups at higher difficulties, they might not be able to learn or understand those mechanics that are needed. With an LFG system or a quick play matchmaking system, at its core, you want to have that convenience. You want to have somewhat of an easier difficulty, so you're not steamrolled and you have no progress. But you also want to be faced with a few mechanics that can, you know, challenge the player and expand their knowledge of the game. I'm not sure if Guild Wars 2 has really struck that balance, but I think this is, of course, their first step. I want to also reiterate that I'm fully aware that this is the very first time they are really entertaining a system like this. And I have been enjoying this. I think regardless of my other philosophical ideas when it comes to quick play systems and matchmaking, I am enjoying this so much. So much so that I actually would love for them to just implement this to tier 2 and tier 3 fractals, where you can only queue up for those if that character has an appropriate amount of predetermined agony resistance that the developers deem as like, you must have 30 agony resistance or something to do tier 2s or tier 3s. Similar to like a gear check in other MMORPGs, particularly for fractals, it makes the most sense as well. And that's maybe where you can start to see a little bit of a progression in difficulty, where you can have the tier 1s be really easy, really simple. Then, as players are able to farm up their agony resistance, you can then have a quick play system for the tier 2. Maybe they introduce that later on to test to see how much difficulty quick play groups can really withstand and take. That might be a good incremental implementation for the developers to also collect data to see where that difficulty check really lies. In addition to this, I would love for them to bring this to just dungeons, like outright classic story Guild Wars 2 dungeons, so people can get into those types of content without having to necessarily be afraid of posting something on the LFG bulletin board or having to wait around to look. You can just queue up and have it cycling in the background. But once again, this is the very first time doing the system, which I think leads me to a segment where I want to talk about perhaps things that I would like to see. This is still tied to the LFG system or LFG window that we currently have, which I think is a little outdated and is not the most impressive when it comes to visual readability or advertisement. Guild Wars 2 has various tabs for their other game modes like PvP and World vs. World, which have a lot more character and a lot more readability to their actual UI windows. They don't have a PvE tab in Guild Wars 2 yet. I say yet because you never know, and I really would love for them to perhaps pursue that, where a PvE tab is a central hub, a central UI window where players can look to see what you can do in the game. And that would include things like core Guild Wars 2 dungeons, Guild Wars 2 Fractal Dungeons, Guild Wars 2 raid encounters, including both strike missions and raids, and perhaps even having somewhat of an in-game meta timer that you can keep track of world bosses that are popping up, so you don't have to use the wiki. even though the wiki is a fantastic tool, please use that. So I like this implementation, and I think it has promise. It definitely does. But having a more separated UI system where people can, just quickly hit a key and already like be ready to queue into a random dungeon, a random fractal, a Quickplay fractal, a Quickplay raid encounter, that might make it a little bit more easy rather than having to go to your contacts, then cycle through and, go down the list to find the fractals, so on and so forth. But once again, first time, I really hope that they continue to iterate this, maybe have something where you can self-volunteer as a particular role so the game could do a little bit more back-end structure. And on top of all of their other beautiful features that they've added to, make sure you and your group can survive the encounters. On top of all of this, like, great Quickplay addition and discussion, there were, of course, the Fractal events that are going on in terms of collecting new armor, new weapons, new gear, and of course the legendary gloves that are going to be released as the weeks continue and we continue on in this great month-long event cycle. And then on top of that, as a last little note, this update also brought with it the official launch of the push game mode. It's no longer in beta, and it is now a permanent fixture of the Guild Wars 2 competitive scene. I was actually playing a few games of push, and it's very, very fun. It's very enjoyable. I actually did, of course, win the games that I was playing, so that might also influence my take on the game mode. But even in the betas, I thought that push was very promising, so I'm hopeful that push is well received, and I think adding another map, or perhaps designing another map in the future for the push game mode, might further incentivize players to entertain it. Of course, cycling it standard and maybe even competitive seasons. And yeah, I have high hopes for push and perhaps giving a little bit extra life and love to the competitive scene. I just wonder if this was maybe the patch to launch it with. I would have maybe held off and waited for the actual release of Visions of Eternity when there was maybe more of a surge of players, but I don't know. That's not my decision. Thank you all for watching. I would love to hear what you have to say about the new Quickplay system and the new matchmaking system for PvE when it comes to Fractal Dungeons. Do you think that it could be expanded to the higher tiers, maybe with an agony resistance check? How do you feel about the difficulty at tier 1? Of course, it seems rather quick in the games that I've been playing, but how are you taking it? If you are new to Fractals and have never done it before, I would particularly love to hear from you. Do you think that's too fast? Do you think it's an okay pace? Is there something that is perhaps a thorn in your side? And if you have any other comments about the overall events and the PvP, feel free to comment down below. Comment, like, and subscribe. Head on over to my Twitch. I stream there during the weekends, playing Guild Wars 2 and various other MMOs and RPGs. We clown around a lot, and I would love to see you there. If you'd like to pre-order Visions of Eternity, I also have links below. They greatly help out the channel. Thank you all, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Mwah!